Every quarter when the ACCA exams come up, there is a panic situation that students go through, specifically a couple of weeks before the exam. And no matter how much we tell them that the overall planning and the way to prepare for the exams, besides of course the core technical subject, all the planning has to be done more so from a discipline perspective, more so from the time you're going to start studying for the exam, and hopefully you should take the entire quarter more or less to plan and prepare for the exam. So in this video, I'm going to tell you guys 7 exam tips that should help you guys prepare for your next paper better. Alright, point number 1, plan the study schedule. I am telling you guys that if you know what exam you're planning on giving, what your general day-to-day is like, what is the approximate leave you can get if you're working or you're in college towards the end of before the exam, you can very easily plan how to study based on which level, based on which exam, based on how much time you have, based on how many exams. Again, I give everybody my example, but when I started ACCA for the first year, I gave the first 6 papers, and that time I was only in college and studying. So I had a very relatively relaxed schedule. But from my second year, when I started giving from the 7th exam onwards, I also started taking up my articleship, my PER. And over there, I landed up understanding that morning I would go to college, then work the whole day, and then in the night, I would land up studying how much have I had to complete whatever my schedule was to ensure. And that time there were exams every 6 months. So I would give 3 exams every 6 months. So my preparation was actually a little more difficult because the longer the plan in the future, the more vague or ambiguous the plan becomes. All that being said, I was more or less clear, right? How much of each subject I had to complete by which week or which month end, how much to speeden up my studies if I'm behind schedule, how many more hours to put in the night, how do I plan my attendance, or what is my leave schedule like. It all becomes part of your study plan. So very important to plan your studies. Point number 2, use the right study material. Now, ACCA is very well known across the world for its global publishers, BPP and Kaplan. And I think we have now over 6,000 active students studying with us who are using the Zell notes. So if you know anywhere you can get good notes from, please refer to them as long as they're reliable, train you correctly for the concepts and how to actually appear for them in the exam. Also, when I remember I used to study, there were these technical articles on the official ACCA website, very well explained, complicated, complex problems are sort of distilled down. So I think you should look at all these available resources. Point number 3, practice mocks. Mocks is my holy grail for every student, and it's not just for ACCA, it's for any of the professional qualifications. But ACCA mock exams, this is the way you should approach it. Aim at saying to yourself, I'll give 3 mock exams, ideally around 2 weeks before the exams are about to take place. Now think about it like this. Let's say you're not sure if you're prepared. The one mistake people make is they wait to perfect completing their subject before they appear for the first mock. And that is always the worst thing to do, because it's always easy to tell yourself, I'll study a little more and do it tomorrow and day after and so on and so forth. Take a time frame, for example. You take 15 days before, you'll give the first mock, maybe then 10 days another, and then before, maybe 5 days before the exam, the third mock. And then if you have energy, I'll explain you what to do. The first time you give a mock, you lock yourself, and by the way, when you say a mock, it has to be in a simulated environment like an exam. You lock yourself in the room for 3 hours, 15 minutes, open the laptop, do not mentally solve the sums or answer the questions. When you answer it, type it like it's a real exam, and do not use shortcuts or short forms or tell yourself, this I know. Horrible mistake. Give it properly. There'll be a lot of effort to sort of check your work, or again, if you have trainers, nothing like it, they'll give you feedback. Let's say you don't clear that mock exam, then you prepare a little more and give the second one. Of course, you'll do better. Then you give the third one. This time you've definitely cleared. There is less pressure of the entire exam simulation. The fourth mock, which is actually your final exam, you will be so well ready that the only effort will be how to solve the exam and nothing else, whether it's the computer-based system or your first time giving the exam or a difficult months before that. None of that will matter, because mocks sort of give you the feeling that this exam will not be that difficult because you've done it. The most uncomfortable time is the first time you give it, or doing it abruptly in the middle of your day-to-day routine. All that gets solved with the mock exams. So mock preparation is the holy grail preparing for ACCA. Point number 4, understand and time the exam format. Now, again, everybody who's pursued ACCA will tell you that time management is important. When I used to teach, I would tell students that if you give 100% of the exam and exit, meaning you've completed the entire paper, answered every question, you already have a 50% chance of clearing the exam. I have seen people scoring 48 and 49 and they tell me that, oh, they had missed a 5 or a 10 mark question. And that is so heartbreaking, because if they had allocated the time properly, and you have that habit that I have little time, I'll write the last 2 lines of this answer because I know the exact details of this answer. You overinvest sometimes in a question that you can't get more marks for, and you underestimate how much just writing something for a brand new question will score you. Which means if you have 2 questions of 10 marks each, one which you know, one which you don't know thoroughly. I mean, the one which you know, you are out of time for that question. You have to ensure that you do move ahead with, maybe let's say you get an 8 on 10. But what happens is, when the time is up, you're trying to score that 10 on 10 because you know it. Instead, leave those 2 marks and put that same energy in the new question. On 10, even if you don't know it well, you will still score more than 2. The chances that you will get 10 on 10 here and 0 on 10 here, and that will help you pass the exam is almost impossible. Playing with the time, which also sort of goes back to my previous point, where exam mocks will help you overcome all the... I know it's difficult to move ahead of a question when you know the end of the answer, but your time is up. In the exam, there's a digital clock. I would razor focus look at it all the time and ensure that if I'm out of time, I don't care how much I know of it, but I move on, because the chances of me totally scoring more by answering all questions is higher than answering few questions perfectly. Simultaneously, of course, you have to know the difference between the multiple choice questions and how to sort of get into the habit of solving them quickly in time. There is a spreadsheet and a word processing software in which you have to answer questions. Typing speed, calculation, all of that depends on the exam you're giving. Please prepare for all of that, again, in the mocks or even in the practice questions. In fact, like I keep telling everybody, the Zell LMS, Learning Management System, we've simulated the ACCA environment so that you get the best sort of practice, and the entire objective is you clear the exam in one go. Point number 5, read the question carefully, and most importantly, read the requirement. When there are longer questions, right, what happens is we start reading, and we read the actual ask of the case scenario, which is mentioned at the end. So what I used to do in my exams, and now I think it's become a Zell culture now to have every student do this. You read the requirement first, okay? So what you won't know is exactly what they're asking. There'll be random names of the company or individuals in that question in the exact question. But because you study that subject, you'll more or less obviously make sense of what the question is talking about. And then you start reading. Because when you read that time, what's happening is while you're reading each line, you'll start knowing which points and which are the data points that the question is asking. Think about 2 students, one who reads the question from the top and the other reads it the way I said, where you read the requirement first and then the case scenario. The first guy will read it like a story, read the question, and will reread the entire case study to find what actually matters. Whereas the second guy read the requirement first, read it once, found as much as he could. The second time, even if he has to read it again for more clarity, he'll be faster. There'll be less time invested in that. And most importantly, you're not reading it for any reason but to pass the exam. So don't read it like a story. Understand the objective and then read it. So reading the requirement is the most important aspect of exam preparation. Point number 6, show your workings. Now, ACCA or any of these qualifications which are professional, don't bother if you are... it's not good to have arithmetic and grammatical errors. But honestly, that is not the make or break. What matters is the approach, because in the real world, by chance, if you do make an arithmetic mistake, you have enough people who will figure it out and help you with it. Even though it's not a good thing to make that mistake. But if you don't know how to approach the question or approach the problem, right? Even whether it's an exam problem or a real client-facing problem, if you don't know how to approach it, you don't know how to solve for it, you don't know what to exactly understand about the problem, what to recall from your studies, how to connect the problem with the solution. The rest won't matter. And all of that the examiner can see in your workings. So show your workings carefully. Even if you think you're a 10 on 10, but the workings are not there, you won't score. Or you think you're a 5 on 10, but the workings are there, you might get actually more than 5. That's just basically how it works, because people want to see your approach, not the final answer only. And point number 7, guys, don't panic. In the exam, if you come across something that you are not sure of, obviously, like I remember when I had given my what is now SBR, back then it was corporate reporting. It took me a long time to prepare for that paper. I was self-studying that time, unfortunately. And I remember hoping and praying that some of the concepts I didn't know didn't come in the exam. And when I entered the exam, the first question I saw, I knew it. That sort of gave me a huge relief. But the second question, I did not properly know it. Now, thankfully, it was my professional level, so I knew how to manage my emotions. But so I didn't panic, right? I finished the rest. I tried to answer whatever I knew in the second question, just enough to get me through. And I landed up scoring, I think, 65 on that paper, which was okay. Like, I was happy with that score at that time. The takeaway for me was that if I read and don't know the answer in my head, the minute I read it, I used to panic. And that just won't work. So just relax, solve what you know. From the things that you're worried about that you realize you don't know, don't let it affect your other questions. And what you think you don't know, try and solve how much of you can. You anyway just have allocated a certain time to it. Solve. I'm sure you won't know nothing. That doesn't happen if you studied in the last 3 months. You'll know enough to put something, and on 10 you might score 2. It's better not only score 0 but have lesser marks in other questions because you panicked because of this. So more or less, it's a mental training sort of which you have to go through. It will come through a combination of your preparation of 3 months plus mock exams plus tests plus putting yourself on the practice mode in the same situation as the exam and doing it back to back. So I think, guys, these are the ways that you should ideally prepare for ACCA exams. It should solve majority of you guys' problems. If we missed anything, please let us know in the comments. And guys, if this is the first time you're visiting this channel, then please do click subscribe. We create a lot of content for not just ACCA, but ACCA, CFA, CPA, CMA, IFRS, a lot of finance and accounting qualifications, counseling students, helping them make the right career decision, and hopefully we can do the same for you by the end of this video.